Hi guys, welcome back to J2EE tutorial. This is the 38th video tutorial of J2EE. So let's go and implement one by one within the JSP implicit in practical. So I'm just going to Eclipse. So let me create a new JSP within the web content, new JSP file, which I'll put name as JSP implicit objects example. Let me access this page. There is JSP is capital. So this make sure the file name has to be the case sensitive. You have to give the same name. Otherwise, if you give any case insensitive, then I don't. You'll be getting the 404. So now I got this page. Let me implement one by one. The first one will be the out statement. Out statement anyhow we know. So if you just put first one out. So for out, we know we need to write a scripted. Within the scripted, we need to write out dot print of our message and out JSP implicit object. So I'm just printing this. Let me refresh this page. So you got out, which is about implicit object. And if you want to line for the, if you want to put it in second line, then you just need to put BR. That's it. BR makes you the, it doesn't come. Or you can put ln over here. You got this. So that's about out statement, and we'll see the next one, which is about our request. So for request, let me have one login for this specific example. So in all over this example, I'll be using this particular login, and I'll be creating one HTML file for that. So this HTML I'm telling JSP scriptlet login. So in this login, I'll be having a form. So the reason I'm mentioning titles over here, so then the title particularly it will visible over here. So whatever the title you mentioned over here, that will actually visible within the browser title. So let me have a login form, and I'll simply have input type is equal to text and name is equal to username, and it's a simple text box, and before that let me put username, and next I'll be adding a PR statement and followed by I'll be putting a submit button simply. Value equal to go. So that's it, my form. It's simply having two things. One is username and the submit button. So the action part, I'll be giving this particular JSP. So to the JSP we have, I'll be giving that one for the action. That's it. So let me access this page or the URL, which is JSP scripted login. You got this page. So instead of here, let me put it in same line. That's good. So I have a username form, and if I submit it, it will go to the JSP's scripted object example JSP. So as we seen, if you observe properly, so whenever I create a new file or new JSP, whatever I create, and it is actually I don't need to restart the server. So I'm just creating file and I'm just refresh. I'm just getting the URL particular HTML or JSP, both I can able to access it without restarting the server. So that's a benefit with the JSPs. It's simple as the HTML files, how they behave, the same way it will behave. But the advantage will be you'll be having the Java code inside it. So let's come to the topic, and so we have covered so far the out scripted, and now we are going to cover the other one, which is the request scripted implicit object. Let me use this request implicit object in this form. So what will happen, we created a HTML. Whenever this particular username enters and clicks on go in the browser, when user clicks some name and clicks on go, this will go to the respective JSPs, which is JSP implicit object. Here I want to get those object. For that I need a request implicit object. So let me put that. So I'm just getting that value and printing over here. So the way to get is, you just need to write, there is not required because println we're going to use. So I'm just using a scripted where I can use the Java code. So request dot get parameter. See, you don't need to have two get method or two post methods and all. You can directly get the request object or within the JSP, that's called the implicit object, and directly give the name whatever it is, which is the username, and store it in string variable. So this is a string. Finally you just print that. To print that, use how.println. So so what I have done, I just getting this value by using the request implicit object and printing that. So let me refresh this page, and now I'll be submitting the name. So see, we got this uname, which is James. Let me put this in next line. Now why my BR is going out? Let me have some tags for this, so I think that might work, which I expected. Yep. The reason is you have to use some tags, some HTML tag, whatever the tag you want, so that it will display in proper HTML formats like the BRs. If you put them, that will actually work out for you. So that's a secret, nothing much. So now we have tested out and the second one request. So let me keep it in the same line. And now let's see the other example, which is the response. So response is directly you can have it in the JSP page. With that, you can able to use the response object directly. So let me use that. So the same way I'll be taking for response. So you just need to have a scripted again. So what I'm doing is I'm just navigating to the Google page using the response object. Response dot send redirect to http www.google.com. So I'm just navigating to the Google page. So whenever user clicks on login, what will happen? It will print all the messages immediately. It will go to the Google page. Means whenever user clicks, so this message is printing and all, we are not able to detect. It will directly go to the Google page. Let's see how it works. Just going back, I'm refreshing this page and enter some name. Click on submit. See, it is actually redirected to Google. I'm doing again. So if you have your form ready, then if you just enter a username or something, so you just need to click on submit. What will happen? This will go to the JSP page first, and there we have response.send direct to Google at the last. So this will actually try to print these messages. Once this is done, so it will actually redirect to Google page. Let's see. So it's trying to redirect to Google. So that's about the response object. Name. So the name you will be giving. and servlet class. So the servlet one or whatever it is will be giving that particular class name. So if it is login, then it is login servlet or something, some name, some class name you're going to give it here. And followed by you will be having servlet mapping. So within servlet mapping, you have servlet name which is same. So there is a reason to explain this. So let's wait for a minute. And we have the URL pattern. So the URL pattern, you can say /login. So these will be declaring for declaring any servlets within your web application. So now we see how to declare this kind of servlet declaration for JSPs, because if you see here in our browser, we are actually giving the JSP name itself within the form. So let me comment out this code so that it will not redirect to the Google page, so that I can able to explain you. So this is actually giving the JSP name itself directly, so nothing else. So we know like how to hide this one. Later we can see it. And so first one, I just want to disable this one. So I don't want to show my JSP file names to the client. So I just want to give some URLs. So for that, the solution will be you can have the configuration which is web app configuration. With this, you can able to resolve that issue. Like instead of login servlet class, you just need to mention the JSP file over here. So JSP file. So this is actually class, and instead of JSP class, we have to mention JSP file. So if you just mention JSP file instead of servlet class, so that will actually treat your JSP, but here you have to give your correct JSP file name. So what are the JSP you want, that particular JSP name you have to mention in the JSP file name. So in our case, it's a JSP implicit objects. So for the URL pattern, whatever you want, that you can able to access it. JSP implicit. That's it. If you want to give this particular configuration, then you don't need to have the JSP name. You can put it in the browser. So let me put this within the web.xml so that we can try to access the JSP in a different way. So like how I have other servlets, I'll just putting one JSP configuration, which is my JSP implicit object example.jsp file. I'll be accessing with the URL which is JSP implicit. So as I have the URL in the login form, I can remove this. I can put this as the JSP. Instead of login.jsp, I'll just put this particular direction, which is JSP implicit. Now, as we discussed, we want to remove these parameters in the URL. For that, what I'm doing is I'm just putting method equal to post. That's it. That's it. You're done with the code. Let's run this example. Go to the login. Give James. Now, so we got this 404. So let's see what is the problem. So I think we have declared the JSPs, and for JSP file, we should make sure like we should mention the slash over here. So that's a problem. So otherwise, it will actually look for this JSPs within the root folder. So that's the reason the root folder we have to mention the slash. Then it will able to access it. So as we made some changes within the web.xml, let me restart this Tomcat. So my Tomcat got started. Now let's see. Let's go to the page where I can able to test my code. Now we got the output with the JSP implicit. So now we are not showing any kind of JSP file name or the URL, and now there's no parameters also because we put our form as post method. So if you see, our method is post here. That is the reason it doesn't show any parameters over there. What the username is available, it's not showing over there. And now we got the responses properly. And now let's go to the topic, which is our config. So as I mentioned, we need a servlet declaration for declaring your web with the config parameters. Let's see how can we configure our servlet config parameters or web app. So for that, first you have to go to the servlet declaration, which is your servlet declaration. There you have to mention init param. So this particular init param is called as the config parameters. And within init param, you have to give param name. Name you can give some kind of name like DB name or something. You can give any name over here. Slash param name and value for this. Param value. So if you just give this, so I'll be giving some kind of so MySQL DB param value. So this is called as your config parameter. So this one, whatever you declared within the servlet, which is called as your config parameter, and this particular parameter you can able to get within the JSP file. So let me declare one more, and you can declare n number of init the init parameters, and here you can mention kind of driver name. So you can, it's not like the name you haven't mentioned anything, so it's not like naming conventions you need to have. I'm just giving JDBC driver. So I'm just declaring two config parameters. With this I can able to access these values within the JSP. So let me declare within the web.xml within the JSP configuration. So these are called as the config parameters. I just declared it. Now I need to access these into our servlet, which is our JSP file. So let me go to the JSP. Here I'll just access these values with the config parameter, config implicit object. So let me do that. Just having the scriptlet. In this I'll be putting string, what's the one, db name equal to config dot get init parameter. So which will actually gets the init parameter object, and the name you have to give the same name, and I'm just printing it. Println of db name equal to db name. The same way you can do it for other one also, which is driver. Let me do it the same thing for the driver parameter, which is our driver. So I'm just getting these two values, I'm printing within the JSP file. So as we did some changes in the web.xml, like adding the init parameters, like config parameters, let me restart the server. This server is started. Let me go to the form and submit this form. So let me refresh this. Now I got form. Now here if you see the DB name is MySQL DB and driver is the JDBC driver. So these values where we are getting, these are from the web.xml, the config parameters. So these about the config parameters. So you can use the init parameters within the web.xml so that you can able to get those in the JSPs. So let's see the next one. So the next one will be the application. The application implicit type is the type of servlet context. So let's see how we can implement the servlet context. So these also comes under the web app. So like how we declared init parameter, the same way you have to declare the context parameters over here. So let me clear some space here. I'm just creating some space. So within this, you have to declare your context parameters. So if you're declaring any unique parameter, that is respective to only servlet, but if you declare any parameter which is context parameters within the web app, which is belongs to the whole application, so it means it is accessible for whole applications. So let all the servlets are JSPs. So let me write that context param and param name. You can give anything. Let's take technology, param name, and param value. You can use any param value. Let me put JSP technology. So I'm just declaring a context parameter, so which is outside all the servlet and within the web app. So this config parameter, so this is scope of the config parameter will be within the servlet only, within the servlet or JSP, whatever wherever you declared within that particular servlet or JSP only. But context parameter scope will be within the whole application. That is the reason this is called as application param. So within whole application, all over the servlet, you can able to access this particular parameter. So let me declare within the Eclipse. Let's go to the Eclipse, and so as I mentioned, you can declare your context parameter outside the all the servlet within the web app. So let me put it here. Now I have declared one context param, which is my technology, and this particular context parameter is global for all the JSPs on the servlets. I'm just trying to access this one within my JSP. So which is the fifth one, application. Let me put a scripted tag. So within scripted, I can use the application implicit object so that I can able to get that value. String. So what is that? Technology equal to, or tech equal to, whatever the name you want, you can keep it. There's no problem because it's a simply variable. And here I'm using application dot get init parameter, which is whatever you mentioned over here in web.xml. That one you can copy it and you can put that value over here and just print that value. Now dot print ln of tech. So that's it. Let's restart this application because we made some changes in the web.xml. It started. Let's test it. Go to the login and give some data, submit it. You can get the global object, which is our context parameter with JSP technology. So these are you can demonstrate for application implicit object. Let's see for other types. So what other implicit objects we have? The other one we can say the page and session. Let's see the session here. Later we can see the other things. So for session, you'll be having a session implicit variable directly available within the JSP, which is simply, suppose if you want to set some value, then you can directly use session dot set attribute and name, some name you can give it. User is like you got the username here, then you can bypass that one. What is this one? Uname. You can bypass this one or the session. So that's it. You're done with session set attribute. Suppose if you want to access this one in any other JSPs, let's create another JSP, which is new JSP second.jsp. I'm just creating a second JSP here where I can able to get that particular value. So let me have a scriptlet and try to get that value. String name equal to session dot get attribute. As I mentioned, session is implicit object. You can able to access everywhere in anywhere in the JSPs. Let me get this name. So I'm just setting in a JSP implicit object example and trying to get this value in second.jsp, and the return type of this one is object. I need to typecast this to string, and let me print it over here. Out dot print of name, which is name. So that's it. Let me test this example. So I'm just setting some attribute within the implicit example JSP, and just trying to access it within the second.jsp. To navigate to this JSP, I'm just giving one anchor link ahref equal to second.jsp. So I just done with my code. Let me refresh this page. Let me go back here. I'm just refreshing this and just setting that value. Now we got our page ready, and this was demonstrating session. I just gave an anchor link. So here the value got setted. So what are the username we have? So that is set to session using the session.set attribute. Now I'm trying to access this one within second JSP using get attribute. Let's try this, and I'm just clicking on session.jsp. Here where it is in second.jsp, we are getting the object which is the James. So whatever the name we set it in the session, that we are actually getting it over here. So that's about the session. Let's see the other things. What other is pending? The page context and page and exception. Let's see the page context now. Page context is similar to your sessions scopes and all. Suppose if you have page context like session, how you're setting this page context also in the same way, like page context starts set attribute of page context is similar to your session or request scope whatever you have, but it works differently because the page context will work only for the JSPs, not for the servlets and all. So you can within the page context you can set the scope of the page context. Suppose if you're declaring a page context like page context dot, you'll be having set attribute and get attribute over there itself. Attribute of, let me expand this, attribute of, you can give the key. So what are the key you want to use to refer and the value here, and the third parameter will be page context dot scope. What are the scope you want? If it is session scope, then you can give session scope, or if it is request scope, then you have to give request scope. And these constants are directly available within the page context object. And that's about the page context. And next one will be the page object. So the page object also similar to the page context, but this particular page implicit object, you can use it within this particular JSP only. Suppose if you want to print some error messages, or you want to register some error message or something, so that way you can use the page object. Suppose let's assume this is your scriptlet, and so even this one also, whatever we mentioned over there, these also page context also comes under scriptlet only. And if you want to declare any page implicit object, then you can use page dot log of some message. So suppose what are the message you want, that particular message you can declare it here. So that's about, you can use the page implicit object. The next one is, it's a very important, which is about the error message, which is the exception. Suppose if you want to put any JSP file as exception handling page, that way you can use the exception implicit variable. The way to declare is like suppose if you're getting any exception, suppose if you're expecting any exception or happen within this JSP file, then you have to declare your JSP file as so these are the declarative statements. So these things we can see it in later. So I'm just declaring page declarative statement, and here I need to mention is error page equal to true. And now if you only if you mention this page as error page, then only you can able to access the exception implicit object. Otherwise it's not possible to use the exception implicit object. So if you're trying to use exception implicit object, then you have to make sure this directive you have to declare, which is page is error page equal to true. If you mention that page as error page as true, then you can able to print out the exception over here. Suppose if you want to print out any exception, so you can use the expression tag itself, because it's a exception we're printing, and you can use the exception directly. You can use this keyword directly in your JSP. So what are the implicit object we have exception, that you can directly use it. Suppose if you are expecting this to be the exception handling page, then you have to declare this page as exception handling page, which is the error page true, and then you have to use this exception implicit variable. Then what are the exception you're getting, that will be displayed within the JSP. So make sure this has to be remembered. So that's about the implicit object, and the next tutorial we're going to discuss about very interesting one, which is the JSP directive elements. So which is this one, the page directive is one of the one, and we can discuss what are the types of the directive elements are available within the JSPs. Thanks guys, thanks for watching.